My best friend of 23 years didn't just betray me. She tried to erase my life. She tried to take my career, destroy my reputation, and leave me standing alone while she smiled at me like nothing was wrong. And the most terrifying part? I didn't realize what she was doing until my company placed me on administrative leave and warned me not to talk to anyone about the investigation, especially her. If someone had told me years ago that the woman I trusted more than anyone else would become my worst enemy, I would have laughed. Not because I was careless, but because she had been there through every important moment of my adult life. Her name was Nora, and for most of my life, I would have trusted her with my last breath. I met Nora when we were both in our early 20s, fresh out of college, broke, tired, terrified of becoming failures before we even had a chance to succeed. We worked in the same building but different departments. I remember the first real conversation we had, standing in line at a coffee shop near the office, complaining about how expensive everything was and how unprepared we felt for real adulthood. She laughed easily, loudly, the kind of laugh that made strangers smile. She offered to pay for my coffee when my card declined. That was the beginning. From that day on, we became inseparable. Lunch breaks together, after-work drinks, weekend errands, long phone calls where we talked about dreams we hadn't yet admitted to anyone else. When I got married, Nora stood next to me as my maid of honor. She fixed my veil when I started crying before the ceremony. She whispered, "You're gonna be okay, I've got you." Years later, when my marriage fell apart and I found myself sitting on my living room floor surrounded by divorce papers, Nora was the one who brought takeout and sat with me while I cried. She didn't rush me. She didn't judge me. She just stayed. That kind of loyalty stays with you. It builds trust slowly, brick by brick, until you stop imagining a life where that person isn't part of it. I thought Nora would be in my life forever. That's why the betrayal didn't come with warning bells. It came quietly. If there was one thing in my life that felt solid, it was my career. I wasn't flashy. I wasn't climbing ladders 2 rungs at a time. But I was consistent, reliable, the person people called when something went wrong and they needed it fixed quietly. I showed up early, stayed late, took responsibility when things broke, even when they weren't technically my fault. Over time, that reputation mattered. I earned trust, and slowly I earned stability. So when my manager emailed me one Tuesday morning asking me to stop by his office, I wasn't worried. I assumed it was another routine meeting. It wasn't. He didn't offer me a seat. He didn't smile. He slid a folder across the desk and folded his hands. "We're placing you on administrative leave," he said. The words didn't make sense at first. Administrative leave sounds harmless until you're the one on the receiving end of it. "What for?" I asked. He used phrases instead of answers, some irregularities, compliance concerns, a formal review. That's corporate language for, "We think you did something wrong." I walked out of the building feeling like I'd left a piece of myself behind. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking. I didn't know who to call. Then my phone buzzed. It was Nora. "Hey," her text read, "You sounded stressed earlier. I'm coming over with wine." I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Nothing about the message was wrong, but something in my chest tightened anyway. I ignored the feeling. I told myself I was being dramatic, paranoid, overtired. So I replied, "Sure." She arrived an hour later, smiling, holding a bottle of red wine and a bag of takeout like she always did. She hugged me tightly, too tightly. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. We sat at my kitchen table, and I told her everything. The meeting, the leave, the fear that crept in when I thought about my career disappearing overnight. She listened carefully, almost too carefully. She didn't interrupt. She didn't comfort me right away. She asked questions, precise ones. "What systems do you have access to? Did they mention compliance? Any audits lately?" Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "So did HR mention the compliance audit, or are they waiting to tell you?" I froze. "What audit?" I asked. She blinked. "Just once." "Oh, I just assumed, she said quickly. You know how companies are. She laughed it off, took a sip of wine, changed the subject. But the moment stuck with me. Because HR hadn't mentioned any audit yet, and I couldn't understand how she would have known that. After Nora left that night, I tried to convince myself I was reading too much into things. When you've trusted someone for decades, your mind will bend over backwards to protect that belief. I told myself she was guessing. I told myself I was under stress. I told myself betrayal didn't look like this. But the feeling didn't go away. Over the next few weeks, my world shrank. My work email was locked. My badge no longer worked. Colleagues stopped calling. I felt like I had been erased. And Nora? She suddenly became very present, dropping by with groceries, checking in constantly, asking about HR, deadlines, meetings I hadn't even told her about yet. She framed it as concern, but it felt like surveillance. One afternoon, she came over again, carrying soup and that same careful smile. While she was in the kitchen, her phone rang. She stepped outside to take the call. Her purse was open on the chair. I didn't mean to look, but I did. Inside her purse was a thick folder, not casual papers, not receipts, organized documents, with tabs. My name was written neatly on the front. My hands went cold. I told myself not to touch it. I touched it anyway. Inside were printed emails, internal memos, documents I had never seen, arranged in a way that told a very specific story, a story where I was careless, a story where I broke rules, a story where I committed fraud. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. Footsteps. I shoved the folder back just as Nora walked in. Everything okay? She asked lightly. Yes, I said, too quickly. She smiled, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of her. After Nora left that afternoon, I locked my door and sat on the edge of my couch, staring at the wall. My heart was still racing. I kept replaying the sight of that folder in my mind. The tabs, the neatness, my name written so carefully on the front, like she had taken pride in it. That wasn't concern. That was preparation. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw documents being passed around conference rooms, strangers reading lies about me, decisions being made without my voice in the room. By morning, fear had turned into something else. Focus. If Nora was building a case against me, then she had made one mistake. She had underestimated me. The next time Nora came over, I let her talk. I didn't accuse her. I didn't confront her. I listened. I let her ask questions about HR timelines, access permissions, and internal systems. And I noticed something important. She already knew the answers. Sometimes she would pause mid-question, like she was double-checking information she already had. Other times, she'd react too quickly to things I hadn't even fully explained. She was tracking progress. Me? I started tracking her. I wrote things down. Dates, times, what she asked, what she already seemed to know. I checked my home security system. Not because I expected to see her sneaking around, but because I needed to know who had been in my house when I wasn't. That's when I saw it. Late one evening, about 2 weeks earlier. Nora. Alone. Going into my home office. Staying there for almost 40 minutes. I watched the footage 3 times to be sure. My hands shook so badly, I had to pause the video. That office contained my work laptop, my files, my login access. The truth settled in slowly, like a weight pressing on my chest. She hadn't just betrayed me, she had used me. HR finally called. They wanted me to come in for a formal interview. I prepared carefully. I brought notes, timelines, explanations. But I knew something was wrong the moment I sat down. The questions were specific. Too specific. They referenced emails I hadn't written, documents I hadn't seen. Someone had built a version of me that looked careless, even criminal. I answered calmly. I didn't panic. I didn't accuse. But when the interview ended, I knew I was fighting a story someone else had already written, and Nora had helped write it. That night, I sat alone in my living room, lights off, phone in my hand. I didn't want to do it, but I did. I opened Nora's contact thread. From the backup she didn't know synced to my cloud. And there it was, a message chain she never meant for me to see. The contact name was just one letter, E. The messages were short, direct, cold. E. Is she suspicious yet? Nora. No. She still trusts me. E. Good. HR. Bought the file. Nora. She'll be done soon. She'll be done. My chest tightened. I scrolled further. Nora. This is harder than I thought. E. You wanted her job. You knew the cost. Nora. I know. I just didn't think she'd look at me like this. E. Finish it. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Then I whispered the name out loud. Evan. My ex-husband. The man who had already dismantled my life once before. The man who knew my habits, my fears, my weak spots. The man who had walked away from our marriage with a smile and left me to rebuild myself from nothing. And now he was back. Not to apologize, but to help destroy me. Once I knew Evan was involved, everything made sense. The precision, the patience, the emotional manipulation. Nora hadn't acted alone. She had help from someone who understood me deeply, someone who knew how to apply pressure without being obvious. They weren't just trying to get me fired. They were trying to erase my credibility. Because once that was gone, everything else would follow. My savings, my references, my future. This wasn't revenge. This was replacement. I contacted a lawyer the next morning. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't ramble. I just said, I think I'm being framed. She listened, asked questions, took notes. Then she said something that surprised me. You're not the first. Apparently, corporate sabotage disguised as compliance violations was more common than people realized. And the biggest mistake perpetrators made? They got sloppy. Together, we started pulling threads. Security footage, login records, email metadata. Slowly, the picture became clear. Files had been accessed from my account while I wasn't home. Edits had been made at times I could prove I was elsewhere. Someone had carefully staged evidence, and someone else had helped them justify it. Nora didn't know yet that I knew, and that was my advantage. She kept coming over, bringing food, offering comfort, but something had changed. She was nervous. She asked more questions, pressed harder, slipped more often. One afternoon, she mentioned a specific HR meeting date, a date I hadn't been told yet. I watched her face when I paused before responding. Just for a second, her smile faltered. That was enough. My lawyer advised patience. Let them finish, she said. People reveal everything when they think they've won. So I waited, I documented, I recorded. I stayed calm. And I watched as Nora slowly unraveled under the weight of her own lies. She was tired, snappy, careless. Evan, on the other hand, stayed silent, which worried me, because men like Evan don't retreat. They wait. HR scheduled the final review. I knew what that meant. This was it. Either I walked out cleared, or I walked out ruined. Nora insisted on coming with me for support. I said yes, because I wanted her in the room. I wanted her to hear the truth fall apart. As we walked into the building, she squeezed my hand. You've got this, she said softly. I looked at her and wondered how someone could lie so easily for so long. The conference room was colder than I remembered. Same gray walls, same long table, same faint hum from the air vent above us. But this time, I wasn't afraid. HR sat on one side of the table. Legal was there too. And Nora sat beside me, hands folded neatly in her lap, wearing that familiar calm expression she used when she wanted to look trustworthy. She leaned toward me and whispered, "No matter what happens, I'm here." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. The meeting began the way these things always do. Polite, measured, careful. They summarized the allegations, the irregularities, the supposed violations. I listened without interrupting, and then my lawyer slid a folder across the table. Not thick, not dramatic, just complete. She began calmly. "We'd like to present additional information." Security footage appeared on the screen. My home office. A timestamp. Nora, alone. Opening drawers. Sitting at my desk. Typing. Her breath caught beside me. Login records followed. IP addresses. Email metadata. Each piece connected cleanly. Quietly. Irrefutably. The room went silent. HR shifted in their seats. Then came the messages, printed, enlarged, impossible to deny. The thread between Nora and Evan. I didn't look at her when his name appeared on the screen. I didn't need to. I could feel her unraveling. "This isn't what it looks like," she said finally, her voice too sharp. My lawyer didn't respond. She didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. HR stood up. They asked Nora to step outside. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stared at me. Not with anger, not with guilt, but with something colder, resentment. Like I had taken something from her that she believed she deserved. Security walked her out. The door closed behind them, and just like that, it was over. The investigation ended that afternoon. My name was cleared. The report stated clearly I had been targeted. Deliberately, strategically, I was reinstated with full pay, my record corrected, my reputation restored. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion, the kind that settles deep in your bones. Nora was terminated that same week. Evan was reported for his role. I didn't attend the follow-up meetings. I didn't want to. I had spent too many years letting those two live in my head. I was done. I went back to work the following Monday. Same building, same desk, different world. Colleagues smiled again. Conversations returned. Life moved forward, but something in me had changed. I was more careful now, more observant, less eager to hand my trust to anyone who asked for it. Not bitter, just aware. A month later, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Nora. I never meant for it to go this far. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. Some conversations don't deserve closure. Here's the truth no one warns you about. Betrayal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't slam doors. It sits across from you, brings you food, listens to your fears, and waits. The people who can hurt you the most are the ones who know exactly how. Victory doesn't feel the way movies promise. There was no cheering, no celebration, just a quiet understanding that something important had ended. Not my career, not my life, but a version of me that believed loyalty was guaranteed. And maybe that's okay, because the version of me that walked out of that building was stronger, wiser, and no longer afraid to stand alone. Some friendships are meant to last forever. Others are meant to teach you who you really are. And this one, it taught me that surviving betrayal isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your life and walking forward without looking back.